What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the FF Ballbusters podcast. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this on June 27th. My name is Eric. That's my co-host, Will. How you feeling this morning, man?
Hey, man, feeling good. Good to be back. Feel like we took a little bit of a break. I don't know if the people even
Little
noticed,
bit.
though, because I feel like we've just been uploading still. But it's good to be back for sure.
Yeah, it's been a little while. We've both been kind of busy doing our own things, but yeah, definitely good to be back in studio with you. I'm gonna have a good time with this one. But before we get into the meat of the video, just real quick shout out to some of our sponsors: Dynasty Owner, Underdog, partnered with League Winners, and also Do Numbers. All of the links for those things are down in the description below. We would very much appreciate it if you could support them and support us. And also, if you like the content that we've been putting out, if you like this video, any of that good stuff, leave a like, helps a ton. Subscribe to the channel, helps us grow more than you even know. It's very much appreciated if you do any of that. But today we are going to be talking kind of some breakouts, undervalued players, guys that are currently ranked outside of the top 5, top 10 consensus ranks according to Fantasy Pros that we think could finish much higher than they're currently ranked. So Will, do you have a preference as to what position we start with here today?
Honestly, I'm cool with starting wherever. Yeah, it's your world, man. I'm down to do whatever you want to do here.
No, it's not. But thanks for saying that. Let's start with quarterbacks. Let's just go in order here. We're going to go through all 4 of the fantasy relevant positions. But let's start with the quarterback. We decided that we had to pick guys outside the top 5 consensus rankings for this position. But I'll let you go first. Who is your first player here?
Absolutely. So the first quarterback I wanted to bring up, he's currently listed as a quarterback 14 on Fantasy Pros. That would be Mr. Geno Smith out of Seattle. Somebody that I feel like is a big value. And it's just one of those situations where he finished as a top 5 quarterback last year, but ADP kind of has him outside of the top 15, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because the team itself hasn't changed around Geno Smith. In fact, it's gotten better. They had 2 great receivers in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but now obviously they brought in JSN, who is just going to elevate the team even more. They brought in Zach Charbonnet at running back who's more capable of catching the ball, or at least as shown to be more of a prolific pass catcher than Kenneth Walker has so far in his career. And last year he finished with 30 touchdowns, which is the 4th most in the NFL, meaning he only finished behind Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Meanwhile, like I said, the Seahawks have only made his situation more fantasy friendly. So to have him listed that far outside of the top 10 even, it seems a little bit weird to me, and I feel like Geno Smith would be a good value for people looking for a good quarterback in those mid to late rounds.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that pick. He finished, I think, a lot higher than people realized last year. And yeah, the situation only got better. JSN, I think, is going to be a huge boost to that offense, like you mentioned. So I love Geno Smith as an undervalued player here. My first guy on this list is just outside the top 5. I think this is probably going to be the highest ranked player I have on the whole list. So this one I just wanted to mention because I think there's no reason for him to be outside the top 5, and that's Justin Fields, currently listed as the QB6 on Fantasy Pros. He finished as the QB6 last year, and he only threw for 2,200 yards. Obviously, he still has some developing to do as a passer, but he was throwing to practice squad players all of last year. Legit, the list of players that the Bears trotted out at receiver: Cole Kmet, only 12 games of Darnell Mooney, Equanimous St. Brown, Dante Pettis, Chase Claypool, Byron Pringle, N'Keal Harry, and Velus Jones. None of those guys are starting receivers on any other team. None of them. So now he gets DJ Moore. They drafted Tyler Scott. Darnell Mooney should be back and healthy. I do expect him to make strides as a passer this year. People do seem to kind of forget how good Justin Fields was as a passer in college. He actually led all of college football in completion percentage over expectation in 2019 and 2020 over the likes of guys like Trevor Lawrence, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Zach Wilson, Sam Howell, all those guys that are now in the NFL. So yeah, I think with better weapons, improved offensive line, another year under the same coaching staff, we see his passing yardage go up, his passing touchdowns go up, and he's going to continue to be an absolute threat on the ground. So I see no reason why he finishes outside the top 5.
I have to say, I love that pick. I also love the fact there's been a lot of Justin Fields like hype as of late. I don't know if you've seen just some of the videos of them in training camp, this and that. Seems like he's really
Yeah,
starting to have fun with the game. He's really starting to find his strides, hopefully, and the team respects the hell out of him. So I'm excited to see what comes
absolutely.
forward from Justin Fields too.
For sure. All right, so let's get into your second quarterback here.
Yes, the second quarterback I have on this list also ranked near Geno Smith at the quarterback 15 spot, and it's somebody we've talked about on this channel before, so don't want to get into it too much, but it's Mr. Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets now, formerly of the Green Bay Packers. Is currently listed, I said, as the QB 15, and it's just because last year I feel like he had a down year. He did have a really down year, but let's take a look at what really happened. So last year, Green Bay Packers traded away Devontae Adams. They let Marquez Valdes-Scantling walk, and Aaron Rodgers still had 26 passing touchdowns, which is the seventh most in the NFL. Obviously, in points per game, he struggled quite a bit in terms of yardage, in terms of just getting completions out there. Not a whole lot of great receivers out there, really. Still some people finding their strides, a lot of young guys out there. But with him still finishing with that many touchdowns, besides still playing the year with a thumb injury that he was dealing with for the majority of the year as well, I think that he's still just going to have more opportunity to go up from here. Garrett Wilson hype has been absolutely through the roof this offseason.
Yeah.
So to say that he may have another wide receiver who is close to that caliber, if not on that caliber of a Devontae Adams this year, going with the New York Jets and Garrett Wilson, that would be awesome to see. Obviously, he's got one of his favorite receivers from Green Bay with the team now, and Allen Lazard as well. And back in 2021 and 2020, just so we can take a look to see what things looked like back then, he averaged at least 20.8 fantasy points per game. He has 12 top 10 finishes in his 15 years as a starting quarterback, including 8 top 2 finishes. And just the fact that, he does have these weapons over there, and I feel like Aaron Rodgers could have a possibility of a top 3 finish by the end of the season, much higher than the 15 that he's listed at. So I think he could be a great value, and I think he could find his stride.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. I'm not quite as high on him as you, and we've talked about that, like you said, on the channel before. But no, I definitely think that it's well within his range of outcomes to finish much higher than where he's ranked now, and potentially even top 5. So that makes a lot of sense to me. My second quarterback on the list, I'm going with another Russian quarterback here, and that's Anthony Richardson, currently listed as the QB 17 on Fantasy Pros. Like I mentioned with Justin Fields, he finishes as the QB 6. This is Justin Fields I'm talking about. Finishes as the QB 6 while throwing for only 2,200 yards. Obviously, he was bolstered by his 1,100 rushing yards. Another guy in a similar situation, Daniel Jones, finishes the QB 9 with only 3,200 passing yards and 15 passing touchdowns. Really, really low numbers, but he got there because of his 708 rushing yards. I think Anthony Richardson will have a better supporting cast, both receivers and offensive line, than both of those guys. And so I don't really see why he can't finish somewhere in between those two in terms of passing yards and rushing yards. So, like, for example, let's say he finishes with like 2,800 passing yards and a little over 900 rushing yards. That alone would be enough for him to finish top 12, like pretty easily, honestly. But the real bold prediction that I have here is that I think Anthony Richardson has a chance to challenge Cam Newton's record for most rushing yards by a quarterback in a season. He did that in 2017? No, 2015, I think, with 14 rushing touchdowns. We saw Jalen Hurts get there last year with 13 rushing touchdowns under Shane Steichen, and now Anthony Richardson comes in with Shane Steichen as his head coach, and he's just going to be the best weapon at the goal line for that team. Even with Jonathan Taylor on the team, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially since they haven't outlawed the tush push yet, that's going to be a big strategy for them in the red zone. So yeah, it's kind of tough for me, the more that I've dived into it, to see a world where he doesn't finish at least top 15, probably likely top 12.
Yeah, I can honestly see that 100%. Like you said, the rushing floor is there, and he's just a better rusher than a lot of the guys that we've seen be successful at rushing the ball at the quarterback position in the NFL. Like, he's a better runner than Josh Allen. He's a better runner than Justin Fields. He's just up there. People are comparing him to Lamar Jackson in terms of his rushing ability, and if he's anywhere near that,
yeah.
I
think Justin Fields.
Well, at least in terms of awareness, I think he does have better spatial awareness. I'm saying that.
Certainly in the pocket.
Yeah.
Certainly in the pocket. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a big differentiator between him and Fields too, is that he's got so much better pocket awareness that I think he's going to take a ton less sacks, and that's going to be way less drive killers for the offense, and it'll keep them out there for longer. So, even another point as to why I think Anthony Richardson will succeed. But yeah, let's move on to the running back position. For this one, we said they have to be outside the top 10 consensus rankings. But yeah, I'll let you go first.
So for outside the top 10 consensus rankings, somebody that I thought we should have on the list is someone that we've recently made a video that's going to be coming out soon, actually. Pretty excited about it. Mr. Najee Harris. So I don't want to get into it too much because I do want you guys to check that video out. That will be linked somewhere in the description around here. That way you guys can check it out. But we had a pretty big discussion on Najee Harris and whether he should be valued where he's at or if he should be valued higher. Currently, he's ranked as an RB12. I think that's personally a little bit too low, just based on what we've seen out of Najee Harris, based on the team's situation itself. He's playing on the team right now with the best offensive line he's ever had in his career. In terms of volume, he's got one of the most in the league. But if you really want to see an in-depth analysis in terms of what's going on with Najee Harris and what we really think about him, I do suggest you check out that video. I know it's a little bit short, a little bit of a cop-out right there, but check that video out because we did put a lot into that, and that will be a good resource for you there. But Najee Harris is one of those running backs I think should get that burn.
Yeah, I like it, and that's not a cop out, bro. We're just advertising our other content. That one is going to come out on the League Winners channel. I'm not sure in relation to when this video we're currently recording releases if that'll be out already or not. But like you said, it'll be linked down in the description below for sure. So I like that pick. My first one on the list is Jahmyr Gibbs, currently listed as the RB17. I don't think people realize like how few rush attempts Gibbs is going to need to finish inside the top 12 in half PPR or especially full PPR leagues this year. Christian McCaffrey did it in 2017 while only getting 117 rush attempts. Alvin Kamara not only did it, but was top 4 in 2018 on only 194 rush attempts. And Melvin Gordon did it in that same year with only 175 rushes and only 225 total touches. Like, these are really high finishes for guys that are getting such low volume. They're just incredibly high efficiency. And I really envision that for Jahmyr Gibbs this year. Not only does he get top 12 draft capital, which by itself basically guarantees that he's going to finish top 24 and gives him better than a 50% chance of finishing top 12. But he also gets drafted to a high-paced, high-efficiency offense with one of the best offensive lines in football and the dump-off king at quarterback in Jared Goff. So I think he's just in the perfect position to succeed basically immediately.
Absolutely. I think everybody's super excited about Jahmyr Gibbs, and like you said, there's all the reason in the world to be. It's a great landing spot. He's a great player. His role in that offense obviously has been vacated now that DeAndre Swift is out of town. So yeah, it's going to be awesome to see Jahmyr Gibbs out there.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into your RB2 here.
Yes, my RB2, I actually do have a player here, guys, that I'm going to talk about. I got Mr. Miles Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. Somebody I was actually pretty excited to see get signed over with the Panthers.
I like that one.
Thank you. So taking a look at the situation over there at Carolina, Deuce Staley is over there right now. That's a former Eagles running back coach. Frank Reich, also there, former Eagles coach. And Josh McCown, former Eagles quarterback. So they've all kind of seen what Miles Sanders can do firsthand. They've gotten firsthand experience of his talents, especially when Deuce Staley was there. Sanders actually saw his best receiving year too, catching 50 receptions for 509 yards as a rookie in 2019. He hasn't done as much receiving work since then, also since Deuce Staley's been gone. But the fact that they're reintroducing him back here, Deonta Foreman's gone. The guys behind him, with Rasheed Blackshear and Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think either of them are better running backs than Miles Sanders, and I think that Miles Sanders does have an opportunity to raise up as sort of a 3-down back here in Carolina, sort of get some of that volume in this offense. Obviously, I feel like Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear are going to split work, possibly on 3rd down, stuff like that, but I do think there is a good possibility that Miles Sanders does get the 3-down nod. And last year, he just kind of showed everybody what he was capable of doing. He finished at the RB10 in half PPR scoring overall and 13 in points per game from weeks 1 to 17. He also ended the year averaging just south of 5 yards per carry. He scored 13 rushing touchdowns after scoring 0 in 2021, so those concerns were done after that.
Silenced quickly.
Absolutely. And his carries inside the 10-yard line ranked inside the top 5 amongst all running backs last year. So can he handle the workload and can he stay healthy throughout the season? He did kind of put some of those worries to rest last year. And also the team just put a good amount of money behind him when they did sign him as well. And just taking a look at Carolina itself, I think Miles Sanders himself is a very efficient running back, and he's going to be rushing behind an offensive line that did finish 9th in adjusted line yards in 2022, so that is pretty encouraging going forward as well. They made Deonta Foreman look like a really good running back, so I'm excited to see what Miles Sanders can do there as well.
Absolutely, bro. I love that pick. I'm kind of jealous that I didn't put him on my list, actually.
Dog, I think he's gonna stun out there a little bit.
Yeah, so like I do think efficiency is going to come down just because the offense, like he was going from the Eagles, one of the most efficient offenses in the league, to Carolina. But I think volume's probably going to go up. Bryce Young at quarterback, they're probably going to want to feed him the ball. And like you mentioned, I think he is underrated as a receiver. In college, he was a really good receiver. In his first year in the NFL, under Deuce Staley, like you mentioned, really good receiver. But then Jalen Hurts comes in. There's just less passing volume in general, and also they bring in Kenny Gainwell, other passing down guys, so he didn't get as much looks in that portion of the game. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could see huge improvements for Miles Sanders this year. My RB2 here is a little bit of a long shot, I acknowledge, but it's James Conner, the RB22 in consensus rankings right now. I think this one is probably going to have to be in terms of points per game finish because Conner has a very tough time staying healthy. But James Conner just accomplished that feat last year, finishing as the RB10 in points per game among running backs in half PPR scoring. I don't expect him to suddenly become efficient this year. He's never been. That's not going to happen. But I do see him getting a ton of volume and receiving work. The Cardinals are going to be bad this year. So that does hurt his probable rushing yards and rushing touchdown upside. But I think it does mean that the team is going to be constantly playing from behind, and with a poor offensive line and likely Colt McCoy starting for a good chunk of the year, that's going to mean a ton of checkdowns for James Conner. And he has no competition in terms of being the lead back. I think the best guy on the team besides him is Keontae Ingram. He got less than 40 touches last year or something. But let's look at James Conner's performance in games that McCoy started last year. I think that's a 4-game sample size. He averaged over 16 points per game and over 5 targets a game. So really good usage, a really good fantasy performance. And I think hopefully even with Kyler in the game, the efficiency of the offense will go up at least a little bit, and probably with his rushing ability, that will also open up some rushing lanes for James Conner as well. So regardless of who's starting at quarterback, I think the volume is going to be there, and that's going to be his way, to vault himself higher in the rankings.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Like you said, they brought in no competition really in terms of running backs. We thought the team may go for a Zach Charbonnet, something like that. That was big in the offseason, but no, they just didn't do that. They're going to be riding James Conner until the wheels fall off, which, I guess is going to be very good for fantasy because volume's king at the end of the day, really. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So let's move on to the wide receiver position. We said again for this one, they have to be outside the top 10 in consensus ranks. I'll let you go first once again.
All right. So the first wide receiver I have up here, sorry, I'm getting the list pulled up so I can see what his exact rank is right now. He's listed right now as the wide receiver 15, and that would be Mr. Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns. Last year, Amari Cooper actually sort of became the volume receiver we've kind of been waiting for him to be most of his career. I feel like besides, what was the last year that he was really a big volume receiver? I feel like it was 2019, something like that. It's been a while, but he was able to reemerge. We'll get back into the facts. Cooper last year, 26.1% target share in that offense, which was 16th in the league, and a 26.1% target per route run rate, which is 20th in the league, and a 38.3% air yard share, which was 7th in the league. Amari Cooper is entering his 29-year season. His year 29. He's 29 years old. But I don't feel like he's really taken any steps back. I don't think his production is going to fall off yet. Obviously, receivers don't age out quite as quickly, so I still feel like while he may not be strictly in his prime, he still is close to that, and he still is able to produce at a high level as he showed last year. And last year was his highest yards per route run since 2019. Yeah, I do have that written here. Cooper was also 12th in red zone and deep targets, and as long as I feel like Deshaun Watson can return to some sort of football that he was playing before his obvious hiatus, I think that Amari Cooper could have a great season. Could be at least a wide receiver 2, maybe even a low-end wide receiver 1.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of it hinges, basically all of it hinges on Deshaun Watson's performance, because we know what Amari Cooper is. Like you said, he hasn't dropped off yet. I expect him to perform at a high level. It's just if his quarterback returns to form of being like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, then yeah, we're going to see him vastly outperform where he's currently ranked.
Absolutely.
So, I like that one a lot. For me, my first guy on the list is going to be Calvin Ridley, currently ranked as the wide receiver 21 according to Fantasy Pros.
He was also on my list. That was my second player.
Okay.
I knew this was going to happen.
So we can
kind
of talk about him.
Hell
we can talk about him in conjunction. I don't have a ton written down because we've also talked about him a ton throughout the offseason so far as like a trade target. So if you want to see trade target videos, we have him listed in there as well. But just real quickly, like, it's been a long time since we've seen Ridley produce at a high level. So I understand the skepticism. I understand why people might be hesitant to rank him higher. But in his last full season on the field in 2020, he finished as the wide receiver 4 in fantasy, averaging 15.8 half PPR points per game. He also did that while being the wide receiver 2 on his own team behind Julio Jones. So it just shows how efficient that he can be regardless of the role. But I think now he comes to an ascending Jaguars team with an ascending quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think, at least for me, that there's any debate that he's going to be the wide receiver 1. Some people would say that maybe Christian Kirk is going to push for that, but I really think Calvin Ridley is just by far the superior wide receiver. And yeah, like I mentioned, like Trevor Lawrence is getting hyped like crazy right now. People are talking about him finishing as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy this year and this offense taking a huge jump. So I don't understand why people wouldn't be hyping Ridley equally, like why they wouldn't be putting the same hype on him to potentially finish as a top 12 wide receiver in that offense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think the Calvin Ridley, disrespect, has gotten a little bit out of hand. I know he hasn't really played football in what feels like 2 years. It's really been kind of 2 years because that season even he didn't play a whole lot, I feel like.
Yeah, the 2021 season was pretty injury riddled, but even in that season, in the time that he was on the field, he was still incredibly efficient and earning targets at an astronomical rate. It was kind of crazy.
I've actually got that right here because that year in 2021, he was 7th in target share, 27.4%, 4th in air yard share with 40%, and 5th in route.
40%?
Yeah, and 5th in route win rate. It's just the fact that he was playing with Matt Ryan, who's ass, that, things didn't really go super well. But any other receiver with that kind of volume and the talent that Calvin Ridley has, if the ball can get thrown to him, he's going to make something happen with it. And it's like you said, even if Christian Kirk is still the wide receiver 1 with Jacksonville, right? Let's say that. And Calvin Ridley just gets Zay Jones' role in this offense, what Zay Jones did last year in this offense. If he gets that opportunity, he's taking it and he's running with it. So while he may not get wide receiver 1 targets, maybe that goes to Christian Kirk. I think in terms of production, Calvin Ridley's going to get it regardless of what happens out there.
Yeah. I like I said, I think that he will be the wide receiver 1, so he will get that volume. But even if he doesn't, that's exactly what as the wide receiver in Atlanta, he finishes the wide receiver in fan. So, yeah, I think the disrespect has gone too far. So that was your second wide receiver on the list.
Yeah, that was my second on the list.
Okay. All right. So we both got to talk about him. So I'll jump into my second wide receiver, which it's a little bit of a tough one for me, but it's Christian Watson as the wide receiver 25.
Fancy MVS.
I say it's a tough one. Yeah, fancy MVS. Shout out to Thomas over at League Winners. Go check him out. But yeah, I say it's tough because I'm not sure how I feel about Watson, like as a player, not necessarily as a fantasy asset, but just whether I think he's actually good at football or not. Still in question for me, but let's talk about why I think he could potentially finish higher than this ranking. So like with that uncertainty comes a very wide range of outcomes. I do think that finishing as a top 12 wide receiver falls within that range. According to Dynasty Zoltan on Twitter, last year he finished 2nd in quarterback ranking when targeted, 2nd in contested catch rate, 4th in yards after catch per reception, 9th in ADOT, and 11th in yards per route run. So really, really good underlying metrics for Christian Watson. And once he got healthy after dealing with a bunch of injuries early on in the season, from weeks 10 through 18, he averaged over 15 half PPR points per game. During that back half of the season, he was basically a wide receiver 1 for the remainder of the season. He also has the second highest athletic score of any receiver over the past 35 years. So athletically, he's built to do it. Um, I think like all of those things in culmination could lead to a breakout and do indicate like we've seen guys with these type of underlying metrics in the past really break out in year two. But I do think there's also a possibility that Jordan Love just sucks. Passing volume and efficiency go down for the Packers. They rely heavily on Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. And Watson's deep ball efficiency that he saw at a really, really high rate last year goes down, leading to a fairly disappointing season. So I can kind of see it both ways.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where we're going to find out this year if Christian Watson found as much success as he did last year because he was winning, routes, he was doing the things he's supposed to do as a receiver, or if it was because Aaron Rodgers was there and he was able to get things together every once in a while. Because there was a point in time where Christian Watson, every catch was a touchdown, just about. Yeah. Or he was he was scoring at an alarming rate. And I don't know if that's going to continue with Jordan Love, like you said. So it could go either way. But I am optimistic at least. I do think that as a talent, Christian Watson is good. He was a second-round pick, right? Second-round pick? Third-round pick?
I believe so.
One of those two. So. But he's no slouch at the end of the day. The only thing I was anywhat concerned about with Christian Watson was just injury stuff. I feel like he was hurt all of last year. He had an injury designation every week. But they're all different injuries, so that's at least kind of, encouraging. But at the very least, I am excited to see what he can do. I'm excited to see how this Jordan Love Packers team even works out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's a lot up in the air in terms of how this team is going to work out, and a lot of it hinges on Jordan's performance this year. So it will be interesting for sure. Let's get into our last position here. And again, like I mentioned at the top, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, if you're learning anything, please leave a like. Helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the channel and see our videos coming out down the road. Let's get into tight ends. We went back to outside the top 5 since it's just a little skimpier of a position, but I'll let you go first here with your first tight end.
Oh man, tight ends are kind of a shit show. So there's a lot of guys we can talk about here who we think are going to finish better. This is a person I think is ranked very low right now, who should not be ranked this low. Mr. Jelani Woods. I'm actually pretty high on him so far going into this year. I think he's ranked right now as a tight end 11.
Is he that high?
I think so. I'm trying to see if I can find it on here.
Because I think he's way lower than that, bro.
I think so, too.
I love the pick.
I think he is way lower,
he's
but where is
on Fantasy Pros, he's ranked as the tight end 29.
God damn. All right. Yeah, tight end 29. Yep. All right, so we're going to talk about it. So, from a dynasty or even just a fantasy football perspective, we all kind of understand you're not really supposed to expect much from rookie tight ends. It's just kind of the history of the NFL. It's kind of how it worked out. Sometimes they pop off. Most of the time they don't. But last year, Jelani Woods led all rookie tight ends in receiving touchdowns with 3. And more importantly, he finished second on the team in receiving touchdowns because he caught 1 fewer than Michael Pittman. And that's kind of impressive because he had 101 fewer targets, still finished with 1 less touchdown. He's also an absolute mammoth of a player. He's like 6'7", 245. He's just absolutely massive.
Definitely bigger than 245.
Actually, I think it's like 260 something. Yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But the Colts also made coach staff changes that could help this young tight end out as well. Bringing in Tom Manning, who was with the Colts back in 2018. And during that year, Eric Ebron was a tight end 4. He averaged 11.8 half PPR points per game. And he had 13 receiving touchdowns, which was the second most in the NFL that year. So if he's able to get anywhere near... What's up?
He's just a red zone monster.
Oh, yeah, he was an absolute dog. And obviously, Jelani Woods, at the size that he's at, could also very much be a red zone monster as well. Could be a nice safety blanket for Mr. Richardson, the rookie quarterback, kind of finding his strides in there. It's a huge target to go for, too. So that's awesome because I believe his catch radius is something insane. I believe it's the 98th percentile just because of how huge he is. And also, the team brought in Shane Steichen this offseason. And last year, Dallas Goedert averaged 5.4 targets and 9.3 fantasy points per game over the last 2 years with Philly, with Steichen as the offensive coordinator. So that's encouraged for the tight end position. And also, he's just been sort of the star of minicamp this year, too. So we've heard a lot of Jelani Woods hype. I'm buying into it. I think he's going to do it. And I think we're primed for a breakout season from him.
Bro, I absolutely love it. Dude, from so far down on the list. I
Hmm.
agree with you. I really like Jelani Woods. I think you mentioned a really good point there with Shane Steichen's usage of Dallas Goedert. We saw really creative usage with him, like around the line of scrimmage. We saw a lot of tight end screen games
Hmm.
for him, and I think Jelani Woods fits that same type of mold. Incredibly athletic, just a huge freak type athlete. So yeah, absolutely could see him get a lot of work in the red zone and in the short passing game. So that should be exciting. My first one is not nearly as far down the list as yours, so I like the confidence that you have with Jelani Woods. I
Oh
went
yeah.
with Darren Waller as the tight end 7. I think that's probably on the more obvious side of people that could finish inside the top 5. Just from what we've seen from him in the past, I don't think he's washed yet. Obviously, he's finished in that top 2 range of tight ends before. He's one of the most athletic tight ends that we've ever seen. And I think he falls into a situation in New York where he's easily the most talented and best receiving option there. And we saw what I always forget his name. Who's the coach?
Oh, Brian Dable.
Brian Dable. Every single time I forget his name, it's crazy. But we saw Brian Dable be incredibly creative with that offense in the way that he schemed open his best players and best receivers. Saquon Barkley being by far and away the best player there. We saw him get used out wide. We saw him get used in the slot, a lot of screen game and stuff like that. And so I expect him to use Darren Waller to his fullest potential. And yeah, I think he gets used at all levels of the field. He's going to be their best receiving option between the 20s. He's going to be their best red zone option, all of the above. So I think really the only thing holding him back is himself,
Hmm.
health, whether he can stay on the field or not. But at least in terms of points per game, when he is on the field, I fully expect him to finish inside the top 5.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that 100%. Darren Waller, yeah, I think he's an absolute dog.
Yeah.
Plus, when the
So who
team's
is your
getting,
tight end too?
plus the team's getting
Oops,
Paris,
sorry.
team's getting Paris Campbell hype, man. Somebody's got to go out there and catch a damn ball. Uh,
It's crazy.
but the last tight end that I picked was actually Mr. Trey McBride for the Arizona Cardinals.
Okay.
Someone else
Dig
is
it.
ranked pretty low as well. I believe he's ranked as the tight end 21.
21st, yeah.
Yeah. But just taking a look at last season, from weeks 14 to 18, Trey McBride was the tight end 11 in fantasy. His role kind of expanded due to a lot of injuries on the team. Obviously, Zach Ertz went down, season-ending injury. A lot of receivers were going down, but it's a weird season that we're going to try to find some context out of. His major highlight came against the Falcons in Week 17. He caught 7 passes for 78 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets, and that was with Marquise Brown still in the active lineup, so he still did have another receiver he was contending with there. And, that did end up being a top 3 fantasy finish, making him just one of 23 tight ends to actually do that. Obviously, there's a lot of question marks going into this season with, Arizona Cardinals, who's going to be playing quarterback, who's this and that. But I feel like that doesn't really affect Trey McBride too much because last year he didn't really get to play with Kyler Murray too much. He really played with Colt McCoy, David Blau, and Trace McSorley for most of the season, or most of the time that he played. So I'm betting on Trey McBride because I do like him as a prospect. He didn't run at the NFL Combine, but at his pro day he ran a 4.55, which is amazing for a tight end. Also, I believe that Zach Ertz, I believe there was an article from Sports Illustrated in the past couple of days. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description below. But Zach Ertz kind of rose as an early cut candidate as well for this team. And
Oh,
the
really?
team, yeah. And the team has already kind of shown they're willing to eat dead cap. They've already cut DeAndre Hopkins. They're willing to clear house if they need to. And I think that Zach Ertz is a candidate because his production has fallen off quite a bit. And that's not even looking at the ACL, MCL tear that he got at 33 years old. So taking a look
That's
at,
a tough one.
yeah, taking a look at Zach Ertz's efficiency by receiving yards per route run. 2017, it was 2.06. 2018, 1.97. 19, 1.67. 2020, 0.92. 2021, 1.42. And 2022, 1.08. He's been below average for the last 3 years, and he's only been declining more and more. And in his prime, Ertz was a great receiver, but he relied on a lot of his route running. And if he's not winning on his routes, I don't know how much he's really going to be able to do out there on the field at age 33, recovering from an ACL tear, which is unfortunate. But I think there's a real chance that he loses a step this year, and if he does, that just primes Trey McBride an opportunity to step up even further. And that's if Zach Ertz comes back this year. That's if his recovery even lines up on time for him to come back and get a role in this offense.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Those two guys that you mentioned are two of my favorite like dynasty late round flyers. I don't know that I could necessarily say that I trust them for redraft this year,
I
but in
think
terms of,
I'm saying in terms of where they're listed at, I think they're gonna end much higher than it. But in
oh
terms
yeah,
of like tight ends, we
absolutely.
we really don't know who's gonna end up where because tight ends are weird, man.
No, that's facts. That's facts. But no, I love those guys, regardless of format for sure.
Hell
They
yeah.
should vastly outperform their current position. Um, so my second guy on the list here is actually Jawan Johnson, listed as the tight end 17 on Fantasy Pros. Um, I think people don't realize how good of a year he had last year. It was hampered a little bit by injuries and obviously changing quarterback play throughout the entire year. We saw Jameis Winston, we saw Taysom Hill, we saw Andy Dalton, we saw a bunch of different kind of flip flops for the Saints throughout the year. But when he had a little bit of a stretch of consistency with Andy Dalton in the middle of the year, was when he played his best football. From week 7 through week 15, I'm just going to read you off his fantasy finishes. He had 15.2 points. This is in half PPR also. 15.2, 1.4, 10.2, 10.4, 10.7, little disappearing act 0, but then 18.7 points. So for the tight end position, especially with guys this low down the list, you can't expect any sort of consistency. There's going to be those disappearing acts. It happens. But he's got incredible touchdown upside. Through those weeks that I mentioned, he had, 7 touchdowns, I believe, in 7 weeks. So he's got the red zone production. And I think he's going to get targeted at a fairly high rate. The team has seemed to warm to him throughout the end of last season and throughout the offseason. They've been talking highly about him. So I really like Jawan Johnson as kind of a late round flyer that I think will outperform his current ranking.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Also, I like the fact that the team shipped out Adam Troutman, traded him to the Broncos, so a little bit less competition there. They brought in Foster Moreau, but as he's still recovering from Hodgkin's lymphoma. He plans to play in 2023, but still stands to be seen. Hoping for a speedy recovery for him. But like you said,
Yeah.
Juwan Johnson has just about all the opportunity there to step up. Taysom Hill's becoming less and less annoying as time goes along. So, yeah, I really do like. I like Juwan Johnson in that spot. That's a good pick. I like that.
Thank you. And hopefully a quarterback upgrade as well. We have Derek Carr coming in, at least some consistency. Andy Dalton was actually not that bad in terms of his underlying metrics at the quarterback position, but consistency and hopefully Derek Carr is a little bit better than what we saw out of Andy Dalton last year.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that will do it. That's all the top 4 positions. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys took something from this. Maybe you guys can draft these guys just a little bit ahead of where they're currently ranked to get some values on your team for the upcoming season. But yeah, again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the channel. That would be very much appreciated. All of the links to our sponsors are down in the description below, whether that be Dynasty Owner, League Winners, Underdog, Do Numbers, all that good stuff. Links and promo codes for discounts down in the description below. And our Discord link is down there. We got a bunch of good people in the Discord that are talking every single day, talking to us, talking amongst themselves, becoming better fantasy football players in there. So please join our community. That would be fantastic. And hopefully it helps you out a ton as well. But yeah, before we get out of here, do you have anything else to say, Will?
Nah, just that usual YouTube stuff. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when we drop our latest videos. Hit that comment button. Let us know if you agree with any of these picks that we had on this list. If you had some guys that you wish that we had on this list that you value yourselves, let us know in the comments below. Like we said, we respond to everything, so we'll have a conversation down in the comments. And also hit that like button. It's absolutely free, and it's the best way to support us and get our stuff out there. So with that being said, if you made it this far into the video, as always, we love you, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.